My mom said my sister needed it more and left me at the airport gate. Now her voice crackled over the phone from thousands of miles away, low and furious. What did you do, Violet? My mother hissed. I could hear the distant murmur of an airport or a hotel lobby behind her, the chaos of a ruined arrival. I tightened my grip on the phone. I could picture her standing at a polished front desk halfway across the world, my father and sister at her side, all of them red-faced and desperate. This call was the last thing I wanted, but it was also the moment I'd been bracing for. The hotel has no record of our reservation, she snapped. And the tours, she trailed off, almost choking on the words. Everything's gone. Cancelled. A bitter heat flushed through me, but I kept my voice steady. I know, I said quietly. There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end. What do you mean, she demanded. Did you? She didn't finish the question. We both knew the answer. I let the silence stretch just long enough for her to understand I wouldn't be her savior this time. I cancelled them, I said, my voice quiet and firm. Yesterday morning, 6:02 a.m. I pulled into my parents' driveway, just as the first hint of sunrise bled into the sky. The air was cool and still. I barely had time to put the car in park when the front door swung open, and my mother stepped out onto the porch with her suitcase. She peered at me with that familiar pinched look of disapproval. You're late, she said, her voice cutting through the morning quiet. I glanced at the dashboard clock, 6:02 a.m. 2 minutes past the agreed time. Forcing a polite smile, I opened my door. Traffic, I murmured as I climbed out. Sorry. She shook her head, already dismissing my words, and started wheeling her suitcase toward the car. I moved to help, but then the door opened again and I saw my sister. Lauren emerged behind my mother, dragging her own suitcase down the porch steps. The breath caught in my throat. She was dressed in head-to-toe travel chic, white sneakers, designer carry-on, an excited grin plastered on her face. For a second, I couldn't process it. This was supposed to be my trip with our parents. Why did Lauren have luggage? My fingers went slack on my mom's suitcase handle. What's going on? I managed to ask, trying and failing to keep my voice steady. My gaze jumped from my sister's smug smile to my mother's overly bright expression. Mom stepped forward as if nothing was amiss. Oh, Violet, good morning, she chimed, too cheerful. We have a bit of a change of plans. We decided Lauren should come instead of you. I just stared at her. The words sounded foreign, like I must have misheard. Instead of me? I repeated slowly. Mom gave a quick, nervous nod. She's been so stressed lately with everything. She really needs this trip to relax. She reached out to touch my arm as if that would soften the blow. You understand, don't you, sweetheart? A cold numbness spread through my chest. I looked at Lauren, who was now standing a few feet behind Mom, avoiding my eyes. She didn't look stressed at all. In fact, she looked like the cat that ate the canary. I forced myself to swallow the hard lump rising in my throat. I've been planning this for years, I said, my voice coming out thin and strained. I paid for everything. Mom waved her hand as if brushing aside a trivial detail. And we're so grateful, Violet, truly. We'll never forget it. She flashed me a smile that didn't reach her eyes. It's just, you're always working so hard. You can take another trip later. But your sister really needs this. It felt like a slap. My ears rang as blood rushed to my face. Lauren finally met my gaze, and I expected to see guilt or embarrassment. But she just tilted her head and smirked. Thanks for understanding, sis, she said, her tone dripping with false sincerity. My heart pounded in my chest. I blinked hard, refusing to cry. My dad had appeared in the doorway now, quietly observing the scene. He shuffled over and held out his suitcase to me without a word. He couldn't even look me in the eye. Moving on autopilot, I accepted Dad's suitcase and loaded it into the trunk alongside Mom's. My hands were trembling slightly. This was supposed to be a special trip for us, my chance to finally do something wonderful for my parents. In an instant, I'd been erased from it. My voice shook despite my efforts to steady it. This was supposed to be our trip, something special for the three of us, I said, turning to face them. Mom had the decency to look briefly guilty, but only for a moment. It still is, honey, she cooed, slipping an arm around Lauren's shoulders. Just with Lauren instead. Please don't make a scene, okay? We'll all go on another trip when you have time off work. Don't make a scene. Of course. I was the one who needed to stay calm. I'd always been the one expected to swallow disappointment with a smile. I pressed my lips together hard and inhaled slowly, pushing down the cocktail of hurt and rage boiling inside. Let's get going then, I said quietly. The words came out flat, mechanical. Without another word, I climbed back into the driver's seat. After a moment, the back doors opened, Mom and Lauren settled in, with Dad sliding into the passenger seat next to me. I started the engine, avoiding my own reflection in the rearview mirror. One glance at my eyes, and I was afraid I'd fall apart. The tires crunched over gravel as we pulled out. At first, nobody spoke. The silence was suffocating, broken only by the soft hum of the engine. I kept my eyes on the road and my knuckles bone white on the steering wheel. We had barely gone 2 blocks when Lauren couldn't hold it in any longer. Oh my gosh, Mom, did you see that TikTok I sent you about Paris? She burst out. I can't wait to go shopping on the Champs-Élysées. Do you think we'll have time between the tours? Maybe we can skip one if there's a really good sale. My jaw tightened as I stared straight ahead. Every word out of her mouth was salt in the wound. Mom just chuckled. We'll figure it out when we get there, honey. Of course we'll have time to shop. In the mirror, I saw Mom reach over to squeeze Lauren's hand, as if this were a celebratory family outing and not a betrayal. When we get there, they were already talking as if I wasn't even present. A hollow feeling opened in my chest. I wasn't part of that we at all. Dad cleared his throat. Thank you for driving us, Violet, he said quietly. I know this probably feels unusual. Unusual, I repeated, a bitter edge to the word. I didn't take my eyes off the road. That's one way to put it. He shifted in his seat, uncomfortable, and fell silent again. In the back, Lauren continued chattering at Mom about influencer travel tips she'd seen online. I reached over and clicked off the radio, which had been playing softly. Some cheerful pop song clashed cruelly with the mood inside the car. A few minutes later, Lauren leaned forward between the seats, her voice sing-song and insincere. You're not mad, right, Vi? I mean, this is really big of you, letting me go. I could never have afforded a trip like this on my own. She actually patted my shoulder as if I should be proud of my generosity. My skin crawled where she touched me. I bit down on the inside of my cheek, tasting blood. For a moment, I trusted myself to speak. I forced a tight smile, eyes still fixed on the road. Of course, Lauren, I replied softly. Enjoy the trip. The effort of keeping my tone polite made my throat ache. Satisfied or oblivious, Lauren sat back and went right on gushing about the vacation. My chest felt like it was caught in a vice. I concentrated on the act of driving. Check mirrors, watch the speedometer, breathe in, breathe out. It was the only thing keeping me from doing or saying something explosive. By the time we reached the airport drop-off zone, my nerves were frayed raw. I pulled up to the departures curb and threw the car into park. The airport bustle swallowed us. Honking taxis, rolling suitcases, travelers hugging hellos and goodbyes. Dawn light was breaking over the terminal, the sky brightening to a crisp blue. I climbed out and opened the trunk. Dad was already hoisting out bags. I moved to help him, and for a split second our eyes met. He opened his mouth like he wanted to say something. Anything. But then he closed it. Instead, he offered a weak, apologetic smile and set a suitcase on the sidewalk. Mom came around the car and pulled me into a hug before I could react. She smelled of her floral perfume and the coffee she'd sipped on the drive, since I usually found comforting. Now they turned my stomach. Thank you for understanding, sweetheart, she murmured against my ear. This means a lot to us and to Lauren. I stood stiff and unresponsive in her embrace. This means a lot to Lauren. Of course it did. Everything always did. Mom pulled back and patted my cheek. Lauren bounded over next, practically vibrating with excitement. She wrapped her arms around me in a hug that was all bounce and no warmth. Thanks, Violet, she chirped. You're the best. I didn't hug her back. Have fun, I managed, the words brittle in my mouth. Lauren either didn't notice my tone or didn't care. She grabbed the handle of her suitcase. I'll buy you a souvenir, she tossed over her shoulder as she wheeled it toward the automatic doors. In a daze, I watched my parents and sister disappear into the terminal, swallowed up by the crowd. The glass doors slid shut behind them with a cruel whoosh, and just like that, they were gone. I stood alone on the curb in the cool morning air, my hands balled into fists at my sides. A lump of emotion, anger, hurt, betrayal, clogged my throat. I swallowed it down, turned on my heel and walked back to my car. If I shed any tears, I was determined it wouldn't be on that sidewalk. The drive home was a blur. My hands shook on the steering wheel, and a storm of thoughts swirled in my head. By the time I pulled into my own driveway, I was breathing hard, as if I'd been running. I turned off the ignition and sat there in the silence, staring blankly through the windshield. They had done it again. Diminished me. Replaced me. Acted like all my effort was nothing. A hot tear slipped down my cheek. I scrubbed it away with the heel of my hand. I didn't want to cry. I was too angry to cry. My chest heaved as I gripped the wheel, knuckles white. In my mind I kept seeing Lauren's smirk, Mom's dismissive wave, Dad's averted eyes. I had given them everything for this trip, and they left me on the curb without a second thought. Slowly, I released the steering wheel. My fingers were stiff and sore. I needed to do something, anything, besides sit here and fall apart. I climbed out of the car and marched into the house with a strange, calm clarity hardening inside me. If they thought they could cut me out of my own gift and still enjoy it, they were in for a surprise. The house was silent as I strode to my desk and flipped open my laptop. My vision tunneled with purpose. Each breath came steady and cool, belying the adrenaline surging in my veins. I logged into the travel site where I'd booked all our hotels. The reservation for Paris glowed on the screen, the 5-star hotel I'd been so excited about. My finger hovered for only a second before clicking cancel. A pop-up asked me to confirm. Yes. Confirmed. Cancelled. Next, the tours. A full itinerary of guided excursions across 3 cities. Click cancelled. Click refunded. One after another, I deleted every experience I'd so carefully planned. Airline upgrades? I navigated to the airline site. I had splurged on business class seats for the long flight as a surprise for my parents. Those were under my name. A few keystrokes, and I cancelled those too. They would still fly to Europe, but they could squeeze into economy like everyone else. Finally, I pulled up the email for the car service I had arranged to pick us up in Paris, a black sedan with a driver holding our name on a placard at the arrivals gate. Cancel. Email after email chimed in my inbox, each confirming a cancellation. I sat back and watched them roll in, one after another, like vindication in digital form. My heart was still pounding, but now there was a grim, savage satisfaction in it. They wanted to take Lauren instead of me? Fine. But they wouldn't be enjoying a luxury vacation on my dime. If Lauren needed a break so badly, they could figure it out themselves. I snapped the laptop shut. In the hush of my living room, I realized I was smiling, a small, fierce smile born of anger and empowerment. I'd been a doormat for them my entire life, always the reasonable one who kept the peace. Not this time. A weight I'd carried for years had lifted, just a little. I sank into the couch, suddenly exhausted. My eyes landed on the neatly packed suitcase by the door, the one I prepared for this trip, thinking I would be on that plane right now. Moving slowly, I walked over to it. With deliberate care, I unzipped the suitcase and began to unpack. Each item I removed felt like tearing up a photograph of a life that might have been. The sundress I'd bought for Paris. I hung it back in the closet. The new walking shoes, meant for strolling down cobblestone streets, back on the shoe rack. I took my time, methodically putting everything back in its place, including the travel guidebook I'd been so eager to use. It hurt. God, it hurt doing that. But with each item I put away, my resolve strengthened. This trip was no longer mine. And if it wasn't mine, it would be no one's. I had just placed the last pair of shoes back on the shelf when I heard my phone buzzing incessantly from the coffee table. I'd left it there when I came in. I walked over and picked it up to find a flood of notifications. Missed calls, texts, one after another, all from Mom, Lauren, Mom, Dad, Mom. My phone shook in my hand from the sheer volume of them. My stomach flipped with a mix of nerves and vindication. They must have landed in Europe and gone straight to the hotel, only to find out what I'd done. I unlocked the phone to read the barrage of texts. Mom, Violet, what's going on? The hotel won't let us check in. They have no reservation under our name. Call me immediately. A few minutes later, another from her. This isn't funny. Fix this now. I snorted under my breath. Fix this. Of course, she expected me to swoop in and save the day. Lauren, we can't check in anywhere. Are you kidding me? Dad, we need to talk. This isn't right. As I scrolled, another call lit up the screen. Mom again. I let it ring. Almost immediately, Lauren's name appeared with an incoming call. I hit ignore. A voicemail notification popped up. With a grimace, I played it on speaker, holding the phone away from my ear as my sister's shrill voice erupted. Violet, this is so petty. We're stuck here because of you. You need to call the hotel right now and fix it. I deleted the voicemail halfway through and tossed the phone onto the couch. For once, they could stew in the mess they created. The calls kept coming. My phone buzzed angrily against the cushions, over and over. Finally, to end the barrage, I snatched it up and answered. Hello. My mother's furious voice exploded on the line. Violet, what is wrong with you? The hotel says our reservation was canceled and none of the tours are booked. Did you do this? I could practically see her face, twisted with rage and disbelief. I said nothing, letting her words hang. My silence was answer enough. Why would you cancel everything? She demanded. In the background, I could hear Lauren whining and my father speaking in low, tense tones. A strange calm had settled over me. You replaced me on my trip, I replied evenly. Did you really think I was going to pay for it while sitting at home? There was a sputter on the other end, my mother at a loss for once. We thought you'd understand, she yelled, incredulous. We're family. We don't do this to each other. A cold laugh burst from my throat. Funny, I snapped. I was thinking the same thing. We don't do this to each other, right? Yet here we are. My voice was shaking now, the anger I'd held in check all morning finally breaking loose. You decided I wasn't important enough to be part of the trip I planned. You chose Lauren over me without a second thought. And you expected me to just, what? Smile and foot the bill? Go to work like nothing happened. You're being dramatic, Mom hissed, but I could hear a crack in her conviction. She hadn't expected a fight. She'd expected guilt to cow me, like it always did. Lauren needed this more than you. You're doing all of this over a little vacation. Stop, I said, voice low. Just stop. You don't get to spin this around. I saved and planned for this for years. And you pulled the rug out from under me because Lauren needed it more. Do you even hear yourselves? Do you even realize how hurtful that is? Clearly not, or we wouldn't be in this situation. The only response was my mother's furious breathing. For a moment, neither of us spoke. When she did speak again, her tone was ice. Do you have any idea how embarrassing this has been for us? We're in a foreign country with no hotels, no tours, nothing. Because you had a tantrum. Something in me fractured at the word tantrum. I felt a sting of tears in my eyes but blinked them back. Enjoy your trip, I said in a deadly calm voice. Oh wait, you can't. Because it's not your trip. It was mine. And now it's nobody's. Mom, just hang up on her. I heard Lauren squawk in the background. She's not going to help. I didn't even let my mother reply. Goodbye, I said and hung up. My hands were shaking violently as I set the phone down. My whole body trembled. I sucked in a breath and let it out slowly, realizing I'd been clenching my jaw so hard it hurt. The quiet that enveloped me felt eerie and thick, like the eye of a storm. I sank onto the couch. What on earth had I just done? In one move, I had upended everything. A small, frightened voice in the back of my mind whispered that I'd gone too far, that I'd regret this. But a stronger voice, newly awakened, said no. They pushed, and you finally pushed back. Good for you. I turned off my phone, cutting short the renewed flurry of incoming outrage. Then I simply sat there, alone in the stillness, and for the first time in as long as I could remember, I let myself breathe. For the rest of that day, I left my phone off and tried to find some semblance of normalcy. I tidied up the house mindlessly, scrubbing the kitchen until the counters gleamed, anything to keep me from replaying the morning on a loop. Every so often I'd feel a surge of anxiety. What if they can't find a place to stay? What if something happens to them? But I'd force it down. They were adults. They would figure it out. By that evening, curiosity and a lingering guilt gnawed at me. I powered my phone back on, bracing myself. It instantly lit up with new messages. Mom, yesterday, 10:18 p.m. You've gone too far, young lady. Your sister is in tears and your father is furious. Lauren, yesterday, 10:20 p.m. This is beyond petty. You're ruining everything. Dad, yesterday, 10:45 p.m. We need to talk. This isn't right. I read them all in a numb haze, then set the phone aside without replying. They still didn't get it. In their narrative, I was the one doing something wrong, not them. I spent the next day in relative peace by keeping my phone silenced. I actually sat on my back porch for a while that morning, sipping coffee and listening to the birds, trying to enjoy the calm after the storm. For once, I prioritized myself, taking slow breaths, letting my mind wander to anything but my family's drama. On the third day since I'd last spoken to my family, the doorbell rang. I peeked through the window to find my best friend Grace on the porch, holding 2 cups of coffee. She gave me a wry, gentle smile as I let her in. Your mom called me, Grace admitted as we settled in the living room. She wanted me to talk to you. I rolled my eyes, heat rising to my cheeks. Of course Mom was recruiting my friends now. Let me guess, she painted me as the villain? Grace shrugged. She said you canceled the trip and they're stranded. I told her I'm sure you have your reasons. She paused, searching my face. So, what did happen? I blew out a breath, suddenly grateful for her presence. And then, haltingly at first, I told her everything. How I'd worked overtime for years to fund the trip, how excited I'd been, and the gut punch of finding out I was being left behind. As I recounted the airport goodbye and the phone confrontation, anger sharpened my words, but a few tears slipped out too. Grace listened without interrupting, her expression shifting from disbelief to anger on my behalf. I always knew your family favored Lauren, but this is wow, she muttered when I finished. She set her cup down with a thump. I'm proud of you, Vi. Honestly, it takes guts to stand up like that. I hadn't realized how badly I needed to hear those words until a knot in my chest loosened. It feels weird, I confessed. I keep bracing for the crushing guilt, but it hasn't come. Grace gave me a small, encouraging smile. Don't go searching for it. They pushed you, and you finally pushed back. They needed that wake-up call, and you needed to put yourself first for once. She nudged my foot with hers. So what now? No more playing family fixer. What's on the horizon for you? I managed a faint laugh. I honestly don't know. For once, it's up to me. And that actually feels pretty good. Grace raised her cup as if in a toast. To new horizons then. We clinked our cardboard cups. For the first time in days, I felt a genuine smile warming my face. After Grace left, I realized I was truly at the helm of my own life for the first time. It was equal parts scary and exhilarating. Over the next few days, I leaned into that feeling. I made decisions for myself, big and small. Replacing the shabby living room couch, a hand-me-down from my parents, with a bright blue one I'd always wanted, wandering through a Saturday farmer's market to buy fresh flowers and pastries just because I could, saying no to a couple of tasks at work that I would normally agree to out of obligation. Each little act of taking control felt like patching a leak in a boat. I was finally becoming seaworthy on my own. On Sunday afternoon, my phone rang unexpectedly, Dad. I hesitated, then answered. Your mom wanted me to call, he said, his voice weary. She thinks maybe you'll listen to me. Silence stretched between us before I replied, I'm listening. This whole thing, it's gotten out of control, he murmured. Your mom's upset, Lauren's furious. But you're better than this, Violet. An old spark of anger flared in my chest. Better than what? I asked. Standing up for myself? You know that's not what I mean, he said quickly. We just never thought. We might have misjudged how much this meant to you. We truly thought Lauren needed it more. And that makes it okay? I shot back. My throat tightened, but I kept my voice steady. You and Mom decided I wasn't important enough to be part of the trip I planned. You replaced me without a second thought. Was that fair? He was quiet for a moment. We didn't see it that way, he said at last, and I could hear the regret in his tone. We never wanted to hurt you. But you did, I replied softly. And I need you to understand. I'm done being the afterthought, Dad. Maybe you all see it now, maybe not, but it's too late. I'm not going to fix this for you. I'm done always fixing everything. From now on, I come first. He sighed into the phone, a long, heavy exhale. All right, he said. If that's how you feel, just know we love you. And when you're ready to talk, we're here. I closed my eyes. I love you too, I whispered. But I meant what I said. We exchanged a subdued goodbye. I hung up with my heart jackhammering in my chest. His attempt at smoothing things over was too little, too late. I needed actions, not words. 2 days later, when my parents and Lauren were due home, I drove over to my parents' house. I knew their flight info. They hadn't exactly thought to hide it from me when this was my trip, so I had a good idea when they'd return. I arrived a little early and settled on the front porch swing, the wood creaking under me as I rocked gently. The humid afternoon air clung to my skin. I could hear the distant buzz of cicadas in the trees as I waited, an untouched cup of iced coffee sweating on the railing beside me. Before long, a taxi rounded the corner and pulled up to the curb. I watched impassively as the doors opened and my family spilled out, one by one, dragging their suitcases. They looked ragged. Even from a distance, I could see my mom's drawn, pale face and the slump of my dad's shoulders. Lauren's usually pristine hair was piled in a messy bun. She wore what looked like the same clothes from a day before, and the sunburn across her cheeks had deepened to an angry red. Lauren spotted me first. She stopped short on the walkway, her eyes narrowing. "I hope you're happy, Violet," she called out, voice raw. I stayed seated on the swing, one leg crossed over the other, and arched an eyebrow. "Happy about what?" I asked coolly as they all approached. Mom let out a harsh laugh as she reached the porch. "About this, Violet. Our trip was a disaster." She dropped her suitcase on the porch step. We had to bounce between motels and last-minute rentals because we couldn't find a decent hotel room. Every tour we showed up for told us our names weren't on the list. We wasted half the trip scrambling, and it was embarrassing. Lauren crossed her arms, her mouth pulled into a scowl. It struck me that I had never seen her look quite so defeated. "Sounds rough," I said softly. "But hey, you wanted some bonding time with Lauren, right? I'm sure you made the best of it." My polite words were barbed with sarcasm, and I saw Mom flinch. "That's not the point," she snapped, her voice rising. "You deliberately sabotaged us. After everything we've done for you over the years, this is how you repay us." That pushed me to my feet. I stood up from the swing, letting it clatter against the siding as I faced them. "Repay you?" I echoed, incredulous. "I planned this trip for you. For us. And you're seriously trying to make me the villain because I wouldn't let you cut me out and still spend my money." I shook my head, anger seeping into the tremble of my voice. "What did you expect, Mom? That I'd just smile and tell you to have fun while I stayed home?" Dad stepped forward, raising a placating hand. "We know you're upset, but canceling everything. That was extreme, sweetheart." I turned my gaze on him and he actually took a half step back. "Why shouldn't I have?" I asked. "If I'm not invited, I'm certainly not paying. If Lauren needed it so badly, maybe you and Mom should have put in the work and saved up to take her yourselves. You hijacked my gift, so I pulled the plug. Frankly, you're lucky I didn't cancel your plane tickets home." Lauren let out a derisive snort. "This is insane. It's just money, Violet." "No, it's not just money." I shot back and I didn't even bother hiding the fury I'd kept muzzled for days. "It's 2 years of my life. 2 years of scrimping and saving, of planning down to the smallest detail. It's the countless hours I spent making sure every moment of this trip would be special for Mom and Dad. You think that's worthless? You think that's something I should just hand over to you without a fight?" Lauren's face had gone slack. My parents were silent too. They probably hadn't seen me this angry since ever. I'd always been so careful to be the easy one, the accommodating one. I drew in a long breath, trying to steady myself. When I spoke again, my voice was low and firm. "I have spent my entire life being the responsible one, the one who fixes things, who gives up what she wants so other people can be happy. And you know what? I've gotten nothing for it except the expectation that I'll always do more, be more, take less. Well, I'm done." I looked at each of them in turn, my mother whose eyes were shining with tears now, my father who looked older than he had a week ago, my sister who suddenly wouldn't meet my gaze. "You chose her over me like you always do. So I chose to remove myself from the equation." Mom's lip trembled. "Violet, we didn't mean to." "No," I interrupted softly. "You didn't think about what it meant." "Not to me." I sighed, the fight draining out of me. "I'm glad you're all back safely. But nothing goes back to the way it was. Don't ever expect me to be okay with being treated like that again." I reached down and picked up my purse from the swing. My piece was said. As I moved to pass them and walked to my car, Mom grabbed my hand. Her eyes were overflowing now, tears streaming down her cheeks. "We're so sorry," she choked out. "We handled this all wrong." I gently pulled my hand free. My own tears threatened, but I held them back. "I know you are," I said quietly. "But I need some time." I meant what I said. Dad cleared his throat, his voice cracking. "We just want a chance to make it right, Vi." I met his eyes, then Lauren's, then Mom's. Their faces blurred as my vision glossed with tears I refused to let fall. I couldn't deal with this. Not now. "I have to go," I whispered. None of them tried to stop me as I walked to my car. I got in and started the engine, my hands trembling on the wheel. Only when I was halfway down the street did I finally brake. The tears came in a hot flood, blinding me. I pulled over to the curb and gave in to them, sobbing until my chest hurt. But by the time I finally pulled into my own driveway, the sobs had tapered to sniffles. An immense sense of relief came over me, as though some invisible chain binding me had snapped. What was broken between us was out in the open now. I had stood up for myself in the most definitive way, and despite the emotional wreckage of the afternoon, I felt free. In the days that followed, I began to truly reclaim my life as my own. The changes I'd started making, those small acts of independence, felt even more significant now. My home became a sanctuary rather than a place of loneliness. Each new decoration or piece of furniture I chose was a quiet affirmation that this is my space. One evening, a few days after my family's return, I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop and opened the spreadsheet that held our entire trip itinerary. Seeing all those carefully arranged plans might have once brought a pang of regret, but now it just strengthened my resolve. That trip had been meant as a once-in-a-lifetime gift, and I wasn't going to let all that effort simply evaporate. So that night, I opened a new tab, did some reading, and booked myself a flight. Not to Paris, not on the same itinerary I'd planned for them. I wanted something just for me, something that wasn't tainted by all of this. By the next morning, I had finalized a 2-week solo trip to Italy for the following month. The moment I clicked confirm purchase on that ticket, a thrill shot through me, a spark of excitement I thought I'd lost in all the drama. Over the next several weeks, I poured myself into preparing for my trip. I dug out my old Italian phrasebook, spent evenings mapping out cities I wanted to see, and filled a new journal with lists of foods to try and museums to visit. Keeping busy with planning gave me something bright to look toward, a beacon pulling me forward. My parents reached out a couple of times during those weeks. Mostly texts, gentler in tone than before. Hope you're doing okay. Maybe we can talk soon. I replied when I felt ready, keeping things short but polite. I wasn't ready for a big conversation yet, and for once, they seemed to respect that, giving me the space I'd asked for. When the day finally came for my flight, I packed my suitcase with an excitement that felt almost childlike. This time, every item going into that bag was for me. There was a quiet defiance in that realization. The moment I stepped out of the plane into the bright Italian sunshine, a wave of exhilaration rolled over me. Rome greeted me with chaos and beauty all at once, scooters zipping down narrow streets lined with ancient ruins, the aroma of baking bread and strong espresso drifting through the warm air. At my small hotel near the city center, I stood on a tiny balcony overlooking a lively market street and realized I hadn't thought about my family's drama once all day. I'd been too busy living. Each morning in Rome, I set out early and let the city guide me. I wandered down cobbled alleys to tucked-away cafes, tossed a coin into the Trevi fountain at dawn, and scribbled in my journal atop the Spanish Steps as the city stirred awake. I spent lazy afternoons marveling at the Colosseum's grandeur and browsing art in hushed, cool churches lit by stained glass. I dined alone in sunlit piazzas on fresh pasta and wine, with no schedule and no one to answer to but myself. After a few days, I took a train north to Florence. Golden fields and gentle hills rolled past the window until the cradle of the Renaissance appeared on the horizon. In Florence, I let myself be swept up in art and atmosphere, standing awestruck before Michelangelo's David one morning, then savoring a cup of gelato by the Arno at sunset. One night, at a tiny trattoria by the river, I chatted in broken Italian with the warm-hearted owner who insisted I try a slice of her tiramisu per la bella ragazza sola, for the lovely girl on her own. I walked back to my hotel under the Tuscan moon that night with a full belly and a fuller heart. In quiet moments, I scribbled down long-neglected dreams, each page a brick in a new path forward. On my last evening, I climbed a hill overlooking Florence, the Piazzale Michelangelo, and watched the city spread out below in the golden dusk. The Duomo's dome glowed as the sun sank, and a street musician's gentle guitar echoed through the warm air. A deep contentment settled over me, the likes of which I hadn't felt in years. This journey was more than a vacation. It was a homecoming to myself. When I eventually landed back home, jet-lagged and glowing from 2 weeks of adventure, I found a text from Mom waiting. Hope you had a nice trip. Maybe we can all talk soon. It was cautious, but it was something. I stared at her message for a long time, then put my phone down without responding. Not yet. This time I would set the terms. A week later, I finally felt ready. When Mom called one evening, I picked up. Hi, Violet, she began softly. Welcome home. Thank you, I said calm and neutral. I wondered if she could sense the change in me, even over the phone. We've been thinking a lot about what happened, she said. Your dad and we realized we handled things poorly. I was quiet, letting her talk. Hearing those words was a start. We should never have done that to you. Replacing you on the trip, it was wrong, she continued, voice wavering. We didn't see it at the time, but we see it now. My throat tightened. I sank down onto my sofa. Thank you for saying that, I managed. We don't want to lose you over this, Mom said, a tremor in her voice. You're our daughter. We love you. And we're so sorry. A tear slipped down my cheek. I quickly brushed it away. I appreciate that. I really do, I answered quietly. But I need you to understand, it wasn't just about the trip. It's about how things have always been. I know, she agreed. And you're right. We've put so much on you over the years. We let you take on more than was fair. And we hurt you deeply this time. We're going to do better, Violet. We promise. I closed my eyes. Part of me wanted to rush forward and hug her through the phone line, to forgive and pretend everything could be perfect. But I'd learned that my own heart needed guarding. It's going to take time, I said. It has to be real. Not just words. I understand, Mom replied. Take all the time you need. We just hope when you're ready, you'll give us a chance to show you. When I'm ready. I realized I believed her sincerity, even though trust would be a longer road. Okay, I said softly. We'll see. We exchanged a few more hesitant pleasantries and goodbyes. When I hung up, I sat in silence for a long while, absorbing what had just happened. It didn't erase the pain of the past, but it felt like the door to the future had cracked open just a little. One quiet summer evening, I sat on my porch with a cup of tea, watching the sky bleed from orange to violet. Not long ago, I would have been terrified at the thought of truly standing up to my parents. I'd spent my whole life tiptoeing around their expectations, afraid to rock the boat. But now, as a few stars appeared overhead, I realized that fear was gone. I had weathered the worst storm with them, and come out intact on the other side. In the stillness, I felt no anger, no guilt, only peace. For the first time in my life, I was living on my own terms. I didn't know exactly what the future held, but I knew I could face it without bending myself to please anyone else. I was free,